This video was made possible thanks to CuriosityStream. Watch TLDR ad-free and get exclusive videos from us by signing up to the CuriosityStream Nebula Bundle deal at curiositystream.com/TLDR Global. A year ago, we showed you this map, in what continues to be the most popular video on the channel. It shows every conflict which was ongoing at the beginning of 2021, with the colours reflecting the number of deaths. A year later, and the map looks like this. Yeah, unfortunately, very little has changed. The colours here represent the severity of the conflicts. The yellow countries represent skirmishes and clashes, where between 10 and 99 people have died in the last year. The orange represents minor conflicts with 100 to 999 deaths. Red represents wars where between 1,000 and 9,999 died, and finally the dark red shows us major wars, incidents where over 10,000 people died. Now, to qualify, as we explained last year, there are a bunch of caveats, but this does broadly reflect the state of the world's conflicts right now, and as we saw, it looks very similar to last year. But are things getting better? Well, unfortunately, the answer to that is a simple no, at least when it comes to fatalities. In 2020, there were 125,514 total fatalities during conflicts, while in 2021, that number reached 164,721, an increase of just over 31%. Not every conflict has become more deadly though. In all of these countries, fewer people died in conflicts in 2021 than in 2020, with the darkest green countries seeing the most positive shift. There are those where things have got worse though, with, again, the darkness of the colour indicating how significant that shift has been. So let's run through some of these conflicts, explaining what's happening there today and how it compares to last year and the years before that. Now, there are, by our count, 59 conflicts in the world today. Obviously, we can't go through all of these in a 10-minute video, so instead we're going to have a look at a few of the most lethal conflicts, and a few of the conflicts that actually improved in 2021. Let's start with the three most lethal conflicts in 2021. They are, in order, the Afghanistan conflict, the civil war in Yemen, and the Tigray War. Interestingly, the first two in this list were also the most lethal conflict in 2020. Unfortunately, things haven't really improved in either conflict. In fact, the number of casualties has actually increased in both cases. Let's start with Afghanistan, the most lethal conflict in 2021, with a massive 42,223 deaths, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. Sadly, this is more than double the 20,836 casualties that occurred in 2020. This increase can largely be attributed to the fact that the Taliban, anticipating a US withdrawal in August, started assaulting provincial capitals in early 2021, and once the withdrawal was complete, well, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know what happened. The Taliban quickly overwhelmed the Afghan army and eventually occupied all of Afghanistan, including Kabul and the Panjshir Valley. Anyway, most of these deaths can be attributed to fighting between the Taliban and the Afghan army, supported by US airstrikes in August. But a significant fraction can also be attributed to fighting between the Taliban and other insurgent groups like IS. The UN estimates that about 1,700 of these were civilians, but this figure disguises the extent of the suffering suffered by ordinary Afghans. While about 1,700 Afghan citizens have been killed directly by war, Afghanistan could soon experience the worst famine in living memory. Thanks to America's decision to freeze the Afghan central bank's assets, the worst drought in 35 years, and economic mismanagement by the Taliban, some 18.8 million Afghans, or 47% of the population, are currently facing high levels of food insecurity, and this figure is expected to rise to 22.8 million over the winter. This famine could kill as many as 1 million children this winter, significantly more than the 70,000 or so civilians killed over the course of the war. So, if it wasn't bad enough that over 40,000 Afghans were killed directly by war in 2021, another million or so could lose their lives as an indirect consequence of war in the near future. Cheery stuff. Alright, on to the second most lethal conflict, Yemen. According to the Uppsala Conflict Data Programme, there were 31,048 casualties in Yemen in 2021, up 57% from the 19,787 casualties in 2020. The conflict in Yemen is essentially a civil war between Houthi rebels and the Yemeni government forces, led by President Mansour Hadi and supported by Saudi Arabia. The conflict began in 2014 and has since morphed into a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The death toll is increasing because the Houthis are gaining the upper hand. For the past few years, it's essentially been an intractable stalemate. The Houthis stuck it out in North Yemen, and the Yemeni government stuck it out in South Yemen, and this has limited the total number of casualties. In early 2021, however, the Houthis gained the upper hand, and in February they began a massive offensive in the province of Marib, then the government's last stronghold. This is bad news, at least for the country's death toll. The Houthis are now less likely to negotiate a ceasefire because, well, they're winning, and the offensive is likely to cost more lives than the de facto stalemate that preceded it. The war has already incurred a massive humanitarian cost. According to UN data, 4 million people have been forced to flee their homes, and more than 20.7 million, 71% of the population, rely on some form of humanitarian assistance to survive, including 5 million on the brink of famine, and almost 50,000 who are already experiencing famine-like conditions. The UNDP estimated in November that 377,000 Yemenis will have been killed by the conflict by the end of 2021, most indirectly and not in combat, 70% of them children under the age of 5. It's no surprise that the UN has described the Yemeni crisis as the world's worst humanitarian disaster. Fought between Abiy Ahmed's central government forces and the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, who used to essentially run Ethiopia and now just run the northern region of Tigray. According to the EEPA, there were 19,200 casualties in 2021, nearly 5 times the 4,269 casualties in 2020. This increase is largely due to the fact that the conflict began in October 2020, which means that there was only 3 months of fighting in 2020 compared to the 12 months of this year. But the fact that the fighting has sustained is bad news. While the TPLF originally looked to have the upper hand, they waited out Abiy's first offensive and then started taking back territory in the second half of 2021, thanks to support from Iran, Israel, Turkey and the UAE. Abiy's government forces now have the upper hand. Again, the worst affected in this conflict are civilians. One of Abiy's tactics has been to deny aid to Tigray, which means that nearly 10 million Tigrayans are currently at risk of famine. So, those are the 3 most lethal conflicts today. What about the conflicts that got significantly worse? Well, 3 conflicts have seen at least a 10-fold increase in casualties: Myanmar, the Israel-Palestine conflict, and the Afar-Somali conflict. According to ACLED, Myanmar's civil war saw 11,114 casualties in 2021, up from just 653 in 2020. This is because the military junta, who took power in February 2021 after an election didn't go their way, have failed to consolidate power and are now fighting a full-on civil war against various ethnic militias. We did a video on it recently, so go watch that if you want to know more. The Israel-Palestine conflict flared up again in 2021, with 450 casualties, up from just 41 in 2020. This is largely down to the fighting that occurred in May, after Israeli security forces were deployed at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, provoking a reaction from Hamas, and then a predictable counter-reaction from the IDF. The Afar-Somali conflict is a long-running border conflict between the Afar and Somali regions in Ethiopia, which is an ethno-federalist state. In 2021, there were 484 casualties, up from just 27 in 2020. This increase is largely down to the chaos which has accompanied Ethiopia's wider civil war. So these are the most lethal conflicts and the conflicts which have got worse. Enough misery though, let's talk about the conflicts that have got better. 3 conflicts that have seen a 90% reduction in casualties are the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, the Libyan crisis, and the Sinai insurgency. The Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, a long-running border conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, saw 57 casualties in 2021, down from 7,748 in 2020. This is essentially because, while border skirmishes have continued in 2021, Azerbaijan won the brief war that occurred in November 2020, with Armenia agreeing to return all occupied territory outside the former Soviet Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast. The Libyan crisis refers to the civil war that's been raging since the death of Gaddafi in 2011. In 2021, there were just 115 casualties, down from 1,509 in 2020. This is thanks to a ceasefire between the two main parties, the Libyan National Army and the Government of National Accord, agreed in August 2020. All in all, while the world has become a more dangerous place in 2021, there are a few spots of optimism. In fact, one continent is remarkably peaceful, despite being framed for drugs, gangs and violence. That's South America. We discuss why South America is so peaceful in our latest video on Nebula, the streaming service my creator friends and I have teamed up to build where we don't need to worry about demonetization or the algorithm. Over there you can find all our latest videos ad-free, and we're going to start posting exclusive Nebula Plus videos over there too, with our first one already live. It's not just us either, all of our favourite educational creators are already there, like Wendover Productions, Real Life Law, Polymatter, Legal, Half as Interesting, and many more. But wait, we said this video was brought to you by CuriosityStream, right? Well, as a platform full of the best documentaries online, they naturally love educational creators like us. As such, we've worked out a deal whereby if you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link in the description, you'll also get free access to Nebula. That's not just a trial either, you'll get access for as long as you're a member. To make things even better, for a limited time, they're offering a deal where you can get 26% off their already low price, making an entire year of both services less than $15. Less than $15 a year for all your favourite educational creators, as well as superb documentaries on CuriosityStream. Signing up at curiositystream.com/TLDR Global or clicking the link below not only gets you the deal, but also directly supports TLDR and educational content on the platform more generally, as well as getting you original content and an ad-free experience.